Okay, so let's figure out today why we sometimes get defensive when people call us out for our wrongdoing. The first step towards this is understanding the nature of defensiveness. Because the thing about it is that it's actually a self protection mechanism that we use because we don't want to feel embarrassed and we don't want to be seen as people who make mistakes and are therefore seen as incompetent. So instead of admitting our mistakes, we then defend ourselves. Another thing is that maybe you feel like the person who's pointing out your mistakes is actually judging you. And because you don't want to be seen as someone who disappoints people because you make mistakes, you then defend yourself and try to justify what you've done. And also, it's very uncomfortable for us to feel guilt and shame because when somebody says, "Hey, Linda, you put the bread in the fridge and not in the bread bin," as an example, um, it's an uncomfortable thing, to feel guilt and shame. So we try to avoid feeling things that are negative. So, in order to then um, cover up for what we've done, instead of admitting our mistakes again and apologizing, what do? We get defensive. Another thing I want to talk about is the relationship really between transgressions that we do and our defensive behavior. This is because of something that is called cognitive dissonance. This, all of us want to think of ourselves as being good people. Um, but sometimes we find that our actions actually don't match up with this good person that we are. So we don't want to, we deny that we can ever do anything wrong. I mean, I can do no wrong. And because of that, I then don't want to cover up the wrong things that I do. And it's actually a sign that you actually have an ego problem and you want to protect your ego instead of admitting your mistakes. Um, and actually, in the long run, it can hurt your relationships and your self image. So it's really important that if you pick up these tendencies in yourself, acknowledge that it is actually the first step to then doing something about it. Another thing is that, we often don't want to face up to the consequences of the things that we've done. So instead of admitting that we're wrong and owning it, we either blame other people or we make excuses or we project um, what we're feeling onto others. And ultimately, the thing is we become so fixated on becoming defensive that we actually then make the situation worse and not better. Let me know in the comments whether or not you've picked up any of these behaviors in yourself. Also, what you think on the whole thing around defensiveness and not wanting to admit when we're wrong. So, one thing that you can do that can actually be very helpful is to stay calm, um, even when you feel like becoming defensive when someone is calling you out. Because when you stay calm, you're able to think clearly and really think through what it is that you've done and why it is that maybe you're being called out. And you can then really think about, okay, this person that's pointing out my mistake, are they doing it because they're trying to be spiteful? Or is there some truth really to what is happening here? So you're actually able to process all of that and really take accountability for what has happened. Another thing that is also quite helpful that you can do is that when you do respond, instead of saying, "Why are you blaming me?" and becoming, defensive, because that is being defensive, use I statements. Say, "I have made a mistake. I'm sorry. I didn't realize that this is how I made you feel." Because then it shows that I'm actually taking accountability for what I've done instead of blaming somebody else or blaming some other external factor, which may not be the case. Because what this helps with is that it actually lowers tension and reduces the likelihood for further conflict and it actually then opens up a conversation on then finding a resolution to what has happened. And also, I would really also encourage you to continually self-reflect when it comes to this. And after, like for example, when someone does bring up something wrong that you've done and calls you out for it, especially if they're not doing it to be to embarrass you or to make you feel bad about yourself, is to really ask yourself, what went wrong here? Why am I behaving this way? Why am I feeling like I need to cover up what I've done? Why can't I just admit it? Just ask yourself, and then also consider, okay, what can I learn from the situation of having been called out for my mistake, and what can I do differently next time when somebody does point out something wrong that I do. And also, really focus in on your role in the situation that has transpired and how you have contributed to where you now are. Taking ownership can actually boost your credibility, because the people that you are then admitting your mistake to will see that you're the type of person who actually owns up and takes responsibility for your actions. So it won't really ruin your street cred, but it will actually improve it. And, yeah, so going forward, I mean, I want you to really recognize, like I've said, that defensiveness is really um, a self-protection mechanism. That is all it is. Because when you start to feel yourself becoming defensive, I want you to really ask yourself, what is going on? Why am I feeling this way? Where is this coming from? What is triggering my defensiveness? And what can I do? So you ask yourself questions, reflective questions, and just make it a habit to catch yourself becoming defensive, and ask yourself those questions so that you can process what's going on, so that you can then get to a place where you can very calmly respond to the situation. Like I've said, using I statements, where, like in the example I used before, where you can say, I am sorry, I made a mistake, I didn't realize I made you feel that way, because it shows that you are really taking accountability for what's happened. And also ask for further clarity if because sometimes you do something and you like, how I didn't realize I made a mistake. Was this actually even wrong? Just ask for clarity from the person that you're talking to, and they may actually say, actually, this is where the error was. So, thank you so much for watching today's video, and if you found it helpful, I would really encourage you to like, subscribe, and share my channel with people who would benefit from it. And it's also important that you press the notification button so that you don't miss future videos that I post. And also, I'd appreciate it if you could share your comments below.